Welcome to In the News for October the 10th, 2025. It's like 10/10/2025. I am Brett Birdie from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. I hope that your day has been a 10 so far, Brett, on this
It's been a 10 out of 10. It's been a
Excellent.
10 out of 10, which is good because you started off today with a very important topic, Jeff. And I am glad that there is such a thing as a World Mental Health Day. And October 10th is recognized as the World Mental Health Day. I'm not really sure exactly where the origins came from. I'm just very happy that the World Health Organization recognizes this. And they're not the only ones. Apple recognizes this as well. They are celebrating World Mental Health Day with a limited edition badge. I always like getting these things. And this one looks pretty cool. This is from Tom's Guide, where they're actually showing the badge that you can earn today if you do what? 10 minutes in one of the mindfulness apps, or take 10 minutes to do a meditation or so. You can describe it better, Jeff.
Yeah, I think you've just said it. Yeah, I think it's either some sort of a meditation or one of those apps. And I think what Apple was careful to say is they're not saying that you have to use the Apple meditation app, although you certainly can. I think what their point is that if you use some third-party app that contributes to the Apple Health data in a way that is sort of in that, mental health, mindfulness, whatever it is, then you can get the same credit for it. There's sort of two things here that I was thinking about. First is just the awards. I mean, you and I have mentioned in the past, I sort of like the silly little awards that you can get. I'm scrolling right now through my, it's now called the fitness app on my iPhone, and I can see all of my little rings that I've gotten in my monthly challenges and my limited edition. It's these limited edition challenges that I think are sort of fun because you never know. Some of them they do year after year, but I have to admit, this is the first time I specifically remember a award for World Mental Health Day. But like in my fitness app, it tells me right there that, if you go in, I haven't done it yet, that as long as you do some sort of record 10 minutes of mindfulness or meditation with any app. So, and I like these things because they're silly little things and they just sort of remind you, today let's try to walk 2 miles, or tomorrow let's try to, and they don't come up very often, but I think they have a good rate of when they come up. So I'm a big favor of these silly little things. And, even though there's nothing, it's just a digital award. I mean, who cares? And yet sometimes
I want it.
Just gives you a little bit of a endorphin rush of, hey, I got an award, whatever. I will say on this particular one, on the mindfulness and the meditation and those sorts of things, I haven't really used them that much. I mean, I play around with them, and I know that for a while with my Apple Watch, it got in a mode where it was telling me every day, you should take some deep breaths and stuff like that. And it was making me anxious to be told that I had to take all those deep breaths. And so I turned it off. I'm like, stop telling me this. I'm never going to under this. So, but I will tell you, there have been, I mean, hopefully I feel like I'm a pretty steady person, but every once in a while, something's happened. I'm like, you know what? I am going to, let's just take a sort of time, take a moment, take time.
Yeah, take a few breaths.
When I do that, I actually do like that the Apple Watch has the little thing. The little flower thing goes bigger and smaller. You take your deep breaths when it. I don't know. I guess I'm not into it. Some people are more into meditation stuff, and perhaps I should do more of it. So, but having said that, now that there's an award today for me to do it for 10 minutes, I'm gonna find some 10 minutes later on tonight.
Me too.
Give it a try. See what I think. Maybe it'll turn me into a big meditation person. Who knows? Anything's possible.
No, so is this one found? So I've been looking so it's in the fitness app, and you have to go. There's a section called awards in here. And is this under monthly challenges? I'm trying to find where this one is located. I suspect it's going to be, if you tap on the thing next to awards, they have something called limited edition challenges. And that's where I can see, for example, that I did the National Parks Challenge, that one was last month. So I think that's where those are. It's all these little, different Earth Day challenge and Veterans Day challenge. I've done the Veterans Day challenge many different times. And all those sorts of ones. But in fact, you're right. As I'm scrolling through these, I've never seen one before for World Mental Health Day Challenge. So it's something new that they decided to do this year. So that's where you get the award. But to actually get it, I mean, if you have an Apple Watch, what I'm going to do later on today is I'm just going to go into the little mindfulness app on my Apple Watch. And then there's all the little things that you can do, like the breathing exercises and the state of mind, all the different ways to do it. I suppose if I just do breathing
and change it. I think my default here is 1 minute, so maybe I'll change it to, well, I guess that's only be 5 minutes, so maybe you have to do that twice. I haven't figured out how to get those 10 minutes yet, but I will figure it out. Hopefully, I will not
You'll
stress
figure
myself
it out
too
today by
much
the
in
end of the
figuring
day.
that out. Exactly. So, but it's fun.
We want to thank quickly our sponsor for today, Lit Software. We're pretty big fans of the iPad apps that they make, which also run on the Macs, by the way, today. We'll get into a little bit more detail about Lit Software and what they offer. You can go to litsoftware.com to find out a little bit more. And as I said, we'll come back and talk about them a little bit. And speaking of iPad, this is interesting because I know that the Lit software apps used to work with the slide over component there. You could add some additional apps and everything. Well, the slide over, I'm almost getting a little confused as to how this goes because, we had the original aspect of just the full screen on an iPad. I'm raising my hand here, looks like in Zoom, but we had the full screen iPad. Then we had the split screen, and we also had the slide over. Then we got rid of that for Stage Manager. Then we had full windowing capabilities. But we could still get back into full screen. We could still have Stage Manager. But apparently, people were complaining that they took away the slide over component. And thank goodness Jason Snell reports on 6 Colors. In iPadOS 26.1, they're going to bring back slide over. And apparently, many people are happy about this.
Yeah, Apple has done so many different attempts to do multitasking on an iPad the right way over the years. And some have been more successful than others, but I think the general consensus of most people, it was certainly my Jeff Richardson consensus, was that, they hadn't quite done it. And so now with iOS 26, where we have a true windowing system like you would get on a computer, it's just so much better. I love it so much better. But the one aspect of the old system that I know a lot of people liked was slide over, because it was sort of nice that you could just take an app and you could just put it to the right, so that you didn't see it. But if you ever wanted to bring it back in again, you would just slide from the right edge and it would come back in and then go back out. And the way that it used to be implemented is you could actually stack a number of them on top of each other and sort of scroll through them. It doesn't look like Apple's going to be doing that. The perfect use I've always thought of slide over was like a passwords app. Is that if you take for me, it's 1Password. If you put 1Password out of its way, you're not even thinking about it. And then when you need to bring it back in, you just slide in and you can use the 1Password app and slide it back out again. And again, you would hope that 1Password is often integrated into Safari enough that you don't even have to bring up the app. It's just, part of,
Right.
Apple's done a pretty good job with your password manager, whether you use Apple Passwords or 1Password or one of the others. But that's an example of one that I would sometimes find myself. Another one that sometimes people would often use is like a notes app, like put my notes app onto the side and then just bring it back in and bring it off to the side. And so I think it's as much as the new system of multitasking has gotten great reviews in iOS 26 or iPadOS 26, it's the one thing that I think a lot of people missed. I think a couple of weeks ago, you and I talked about Harry McCracken. He's been writing about computers for decades, and he really loved that feature, and he thought it was a big loss. And so what really surprised me is that how quickly, iPadOS 26.1, it's in beta now. I presume it'll be out before the end of this year. It's great that they are already working on bringing this feature back.
Yeah.
Now, it's a little different because, first of all, like I said, it doesn't have the multiple stacks. The current version of the beta, it's just one app. It's your one and only app that you can push off to the side and bring back in again.
That's it. Right.
Second of all, we've talked in the past about how there's different modes of multitasking on the iPad nowadays. There's 3 modes. One mode is all apps are in full screen mode. One mode is the Stage Manager, like you said. And then the third mode, and this is the one that I love the most, the brand new one, is it's pure Windows wherever you go. It sounds like this slide over mode, at least in the current beta, is not going to work in the mode where you only have one app at a time. And on the one hand, you say, well, that makes sense. If you're in one app at a time mode, you only want one app at a time. You don't want to be sliding things in. And yet, I actually think that in that mode, it could be useful because that's the mode where you have a full screen thing. This is the app I'm working on. I'm working on a Microsoft Word document, or I'm working in Safari or whatever it is.
Right.
But just for a second, I need to bring in this other app and bring it about it again. I could actually see it being pretty useful in that mode. And I will tell you the way that I've been using my iPad ever since we had the operating system come out last month, I usually live in the one app at a time mode.
Oh, really?
Because I do normally work one app at a time. But there will be times, and it happens almost every day, certainly every week, where I'm like, okay, now I actually do want to be working. And then I discussed in the past how I just go down from my little control center at the top and I tap that one button that's got like a rectangle, and it's got 3 different rectangles on it. I tap that one
Right.
button and it switches me over to the multi-window mode. And then it can have the
Right.
chaos of windows everywhere. But then I go back and I find it so simple and easy to switch back and forth between the modes. I love it. So, for me, we'll see how much I end up using slide over. But if I do want to use it, I could see it being useful in both of the modes, not just in one of the modes. But again, I hate to judge this because this is just literally the
Yeah.
first beta that it's appeared in, and I'm surprised it's there at all. So it's great that it's there. This is the first version. Apple may play with it. They may not even come out with it in iPadOS 26.1. They may decide that it still needs some more time to bake in the oven. Although people are
Hmm.
talking about bringing back slide over, I suspect this is not like bringing back something that they had before because they have a whole new code system. Although I don't know, I'm not a computer science person, but I would imagine that what they've done is they've made something brand new that looks
Right.
sort of like what slide over was. But it's not like they just took the old code and copied and pasted and put it in the new operating system. So we'll see how it all, I don't want to prejudge it too much based upon the early reports, but the big thing is that it's there. So that's pretty cool.
It's
That's pretty cool.
back. Like
Yeah.
there was obviously enough people complaining about it being missing that Apple
hmm
was listening and they were bringing it back. However, they bring it back, that it was that important to them,
Yeah.
which is good. I'm glad that they're doing it. And at the bottom here, Jason talks about a couple of other, or at least one other improvement they're making to
hmm
this whole idea. We haven't talked a whole lot about it here, but I know Jason's talked a lot about it because he uses his iPad for recording audio, mostly from a podcast. And there was a lot of
hmm
improvements in iPad OS 26 on this, and he talks about that there is going to be a little bit of an update on that as well. And then you link to another improvement coming with iPad OS 26.1, which I think is pretty exciting here. That is this right? You could keep your iPad closed, like if you have a keyboard, but still it can be connected to an external monitor and
hmm
show the screen there. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So just to go back to the audio one real quick, I mean,
Yeah.
for so many years, people had wanted to have like true professional computer audio stuff on an iPad, and we just didn't have it. You could really only use one thing at a time. And so it was a big deal for a small segment of folks, whether you're a podcaster or you're otherwise involved in audio stuff for your
Yeah.
iPad. Being able to have the flexibility of a sort of a true audio system was a big deal. And yet the one thing that it lacked is that you had to plug in a microphone that had its own gain on it so that you can control if it's too loud or too soft. And so
Okay.
and you can buy those, they exist. But if you happen to have one where you could not adjust it on the microphone itself, on a computer, it's not a big deal because every computer system has a way you could adjust it in software. The iPad
Correct.
just didn't have it. And so this is another one of those things that I'm impressed that people have, a small part of the population complained about it, and yet
Right.
Apple was able to jump on it and say, we're going to fix that in the next update. So, I mean, even if you don't use this feature, it shows that Apple is paying attention to this stuff. And why this is important to me, Brett, is you and I have seen this for so many years. Apple will have a
Yeah.
year where they do really great stuff for the iPad, and we're all excited. And then the next year, it's like crickets. They do nothing more than bring over
That's
and I
right.
feel like it's
I was just
these
thinking that.
whoa and then nothing,
Yeah.
whoa and nothing. So we are at the top of the roller coaster. All
Right.
these new things in iPad OS 26. I want Apple to say, don't tell your iPad programmers to start working on the next version of the folding iPhone. Keep them here, keep them working on the iPad.
Do
Let's
some
do
more.
updates. And so hopefully this means that we'll see, this was in point one, and point two, we'll see some other good things, point three. And so this next one here this was just a developer, Steve Troughton-Smith, had noticed some things in code. So this hasn't been announced yet, but it makes him
Okay.
think that we may in the future be able to take an iPad and put it in what's called clamshell mode. Now, let me just say, I know most people just use an iPad, just the iPad. That's all you
That's
do.
right.
It's
No
pretty
keyboard.
rare for
Right.
people to connect it.
Right.
Well, I'm not even talking about the keyboard. I'm talking about displays. It's pretty rare for people to connect their iPad to an external monitor. I will tell you that when you
Good
do it,
point.
it's really cool. I mean, the iPad works really well with an external monitor, but you have to have the iPad working too. A lot of people for their computer, like me right here, I'm talking to you from my computer where my PC is, folded. It's in clamshell mode. It's folded down completely. I'm not looking at the screen at all. I never look at the screen. It's just hooked up to my external monitor. The only time I ever look at my computer screen is if I have to pick it up and go mobily somewhere, but usually at my computer. So this mode, if it's allowed, would let you do the same thing on the iPad, that you could take your iPad and you can use your iPad cover to keep it completely closed and have everything on the external screen, which just makes good sense. And what I mentioned in my post today is, and this is different but related feature, and again, I know not a lot of people do this, but the small segment of the folks like me who do sometimes, I might sometimes go to like a coffee house, something like that, and I'm using my Vision Pro, not connected to a Mac because I don't own a Mac or a MacBook Air or something like that. My iPad is like my portable computer for the most part. And so I will have my iPad with me and I want to be looking at my iPad screen on the very, very big Vision Pro screen, and it totally works. I use a keyboard, I use
Oh,
my
really? Oh,
trackpad, all
interesting.
that works fine,
Okay.
but it's a complete mirroring mode. And so everything that I'm seeing in my virtual environment is also on my iPad screen. And I can dim my iPad screen so that it's not very bright. But you don't want somebody to walk by and see what you're doing if it's something more confidential. Usually
Right.
I'm not doing that in a cafe, but I might be, you never know if I'm doing work stuff or just looking at the internet. And so, and my point is just that these are all esoteric things. We're talking about audio gain. We're talking about, even just slide over, only certain power users for the iPad are doing it, but it's all evidence that Apple is saying, the iPad has grown up. We are not going
Right.
to
Right.
disable the iPad. We're going to allow it to do some power features. And yes, it does it differently than the computer, but it's got its own way that it gets there. But it gets there. So it's part of this overall theme that makes me excited about the future of the iPad. So I think this could be a big deal.
There has been no shortage of reviews of the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone Air, and we've covered a lot of them. But there were two today that I just wanted to highlight that you linked to today, just simply
Hmm.
because these are other folks that we respect a whole lot, and
Yeah.
they're at it. And a lot of times they don't even start writing until they've been using the products for quite a while. This one is Dan Moren on the iPhone 17 Pro. Aren't you glad you've gone pro? I like that. He uses my favorite word in here, the usual Foofaraw around whether the iPhone scratches more easily. Because, this has come out now over the several days that people have been using the iPhone, and that, there's the scratch gate now, whatever gate we want to start calling it here. But I thought this was a really nice, concise little review from Dan Moore, and pretty insightful too.
Yeah, whenever you have these new Apple products, they go through three stages of reviews. The first thing is,
Okay.
Apple gives pre-release units to certain members of the press. You and I have never been a
Right.
member of those. And so it means that like a day or two before they go on sale, you can see what somebody at, some publication, the Wall Street Journal or something like that, or one of the tech publications, they've had it, for a week. Nobody else in the world has had it but them. They've just been
Right.
looking at it. And so those are the initial reviews. And they're very useful. I mean, I love those because they come out just as you're making your initial purchase decision if you're trying to buy it in day one. But they've been working on those reviews in a bubble because they can't really talk to other people because they're under non-disclosure
Yeah.
agreements.
Right.
And then you have the second wave of reviews, which are the ones that come out like within the first week of people that, are excited and get their hands on them. And I tended to post those. I got my new iPhone 17 Pro on a Friday and I posted my review on a Monday. And I went very deep in it. It was a long review, but it was still based upon just a couple of days. And so now we have these
Right.
third waves of people that have had them for a couple of weeks. They have the benefit of, taking their time. They have the benefit of seeing what other people are reporting and what they can find.
Exactly.
And so that's why I've been enjoying looking through these. If you're still trying to decide if you want to get something, then, and again, most people did not buy them on day one. They're thinking about getting them, during the holidays and stuff. These are now like great reviews to read because they're a lot more in depth and they take their time with them. And the one that Dan Moren wrote was just really well talking about, the different things for the camera that he did and
Hmm.
how this vapor system we were talking about, I think just a week ago, works really well and really stops
Right.
it from overheating. So so that's why I thought it was a nice. And so of those reviews, this is one you happen to be showing on your screen right now. For example, the tests he was using Geekbench to actually do objective tests of how does the speed change for this one versus the last one. And again, it's not that you're necessarily going to buy a 17 Pro because it's 10% faster than the 16 Pro, but it's useful to see some objective data of now we've put it through the test, we're seeing how they work out. So anyway, these reviews I think are helpful for that reason and very positive. I guess that's probably bearing the lead is that the 17 Pro the
Good
reviews
point.
have been incredibly positive. People
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah.
This is a good year to be getting a pro version of the iPhone.
Indeed. Or if that's not exactly where you want to be, although it could be better,
Hmm.
Jason Snell, also a Six Colors, goes over the iPhone Air review. And, I was interested more in this because, as you and I have talked before, Jason Snell very famously always enjoyed the mini version
Hmm.
size of the iPhone, right? And so I knew the Air wasn't necessarily the mini, but I was interested to see how he looked at it because, he's got a good perspective on that. Um, and I think he ends this here like this isn't, and you and I have said this isn't like the entry level iPhone, even though the Air makes it kind of sound like that it could be. You and I have talked about this, but his point at the very end, his last sentence, but the iPhone Air does feel like the future. Like it makes him happy just to pick it up. And we've said that too. If you go and you pick this up, I mean, you've never had this much gleaming technology, with the iPhone's environment and everything that comes with it, in such a small package like this. I mean, it does feel like the future, but at the same time, it may not be the right phone for you.
Yeah. And he doesn't, you'll notice at the end, he doesn't say, and so therefore you should get this, or for therefore you should not get this.
Exactly.
Because, and I think this is purposeful. He's saying, as a lot of these smarter reviewers are, is that there are real advantages to the Air because it's so light and weighs nothing, and it's just a delight to hold. And there are some real compromises too, depending
Hmm.
upon, do you want to have that zoom camera? Or I think the battery life has been not a big problem, but it is something that you may have to think about the battery a little bit more with this one than other ones. And so it's just you need to make those decisions. But like you say, that last sentence, I mean, that's really the key thing is that we are going to go more down this road. We're going to
Right.
have
Right.
thinner devices. We talked about how the iPhone Air perhaps is the precursor to a folding phone next year. But this is definitely starting to feel like we are getting into the future. It's what I saw. It's what I always say about
Interesting.
my Vision with my Vision Pro, Brett. I love my Vision Pro,
Correct.
but I
That's
know it's
right.
so expensive, but I love it because I feel like I'm living in the future. And that's fine, but I'm not using my Vision Pro to like try to get my work done every day. It's just something that I have fun with on the weekends and stuff like that. So, for your iPhone, if you consider yourself a power user, it's what you're using all day long, every day, and stuff like that. You may decide you want that extra battery power, you want those extra cameras, you want the extra speed and everything else. But if you're a little bit more casual about it, yeah, this is a good device.
Interesting. He said is this correct? The screen size on the iPhone Air is larger than all but the iPhone 17
Yeah,
Pro Max. Okay.
because it's
So,
larger than the 17, and it's
okay.
larger than the 17 Pro, but it's not like the Air and the regular iPhone are the same size. The Air is actually a little bit
Right.
bigger. It's not quite as big as mine,
Interesting.
the Pro Max, but it is a little bit bigger of a screen. So if you're looking for something thin, yeah, go for the Air. But if it's not thinness that you're looking for, if you actually want to have a
Right.
smaller screen, you actually should go with either the regular Pro or the 17 because they're actually technically smaller than the Air. It's sort of an in-between size.
I like how he says, every time I pick up the iPhone Air, I notice how thin and light it feels. And after a week's usage, I switched back to the 17 Pro and was struck by how different that phone felt, thick and heavy,
Mhm.
like a TV remote control or something. And then to my surprise, the screen seemed small. So he went to the 17 Pro. To your point, the Air has a little bit bigger screen on there. And I've never really kind of seen anybody yet kind of compare that. And I thought that was just really, he goes, I found myself missing the iPhone Air's larger screen when I switched to the 17 Pro.
Mhm.
Interesting. So if the bigger screen is something you might want, you don't want to go all the way to the max like you, because that is a little more going to be much more bulkier. So that could be, because I read this and found myself, it's like, well, then who does want the Air? You either want the thinness or what? I mean, that's
Yeah.
really it's the thinness and maybe a little bit of a bigger screen, and maybe just the pride of having something that's new that not a lot of other people have. And I think that was sort of Jason's point here a little bit, is that I don't know where this really fits in, other than it's a very expensive experiment by Apple, and like, can we do this? Can we send something out that is this thin and not bendable, and doesn't have to bend? I mean, all of those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Will it fit for something later on down the road in the future? And I think that's really just the point of all this, as we've talked about.
Yeah. I
which
will
is
tell you
good.
though, just last night I was doing dishes and I was listening to the Connected podcast when one of the co-hosts is Federico Viticci of Mac
Right.
Stories. And he bought the iPhone Air on day one. And he was asked, of course it feels very thin and light when you first start using it. But then like after you sort of get used to it for a couple of weeks, is it like not a big deal anymore? He's like, oh no. This is still, it still
Oh,
feels,
really?
even after almost a month now, he goes, it still feels magical and like this is
Oh,
special. And like for him, he's like, this is definitely the device for me. So I hope that's true. If
interesting.
you decide to go for an iPhone Air, I mean, I would certainly hope that you can appreciate what makes it special the entire time you have it.
And keep appreciating, exactly. And
Hmm.
then you link to just another one here. This is Stephen Hackett at the 512 pixels. I guess he goes over both of them, right? The most pro ever, but he talks a little
Yeah.
bit about the iPhone Air here too.
Yeah, in fact, a lot about it. He talks about the Pro for like two paragraphs, and then he spends the rest of the review talking about the Air because he's like, "That's the most interesting one to talk about."
The new
This is,
kid, he
yeah.
calls it.
So it's
That's another good. I'll make sure we have those reviews in the again. I know we've talked about several of them, but anytime they come up, I just think it's great to maybe point people because a lot of these things can be helpful if you're still thinking about it. Where are you at? This is an
where
Apple
you
Watch
at.
story, but I loved it. I want to use the this is where you at segment because what an interesting story. Apparently, this is a scuba diver. It was in India, I believe, somewhere in India, in the Bay of Bengal, near Puducherry. Anyway, he was down about 120 feet, it says, and a weight belt that he was wearing came unstuck. And so at that point, I mean, I feel like I'm not making fun of this, but I feel like you're just like shooting up to the very top of the water at that point, which is not a healthy
Which
thing.
is
That is not what
dangerous when yeah, that's
it could be
dangerous.
very dangerous. And so I think in this story, it says the Apple Watch tried to warn him or was warning him on the screen, "Hey,
Hmm.
you're going you're bobbing up for apples a little too quick. Like you got to slow down somehow." Somehow he couldn't even get to it. So then the siren, he was wearing an Apple Watch Ultra. I don't know if it was a 2 or
Hmm.
3 or what if we know that exactly on this, but that's important because the Apple Watch Ultra has a 86 decibel siren alarm on it. Now, I've always thought like usually that's the little button that you can tap and hold on the side and after if you were stranded in the wilderness or something. But
Hmm.
no, this came on automatically and he had a diver coach apparently in the water with him and that coach is what heard the siren go off and was able to go and grab him before he went all the way up to the top of the surface. Just amazing that
Yeah.
went off.
I mean, I've never even thought about it in the context. We talk about like when you fall down and your Apple Watch senses that
Right?
and tries to call for help, and that's useful. And even in the context of the siren, I mean, I've thought about it being like you said, number one, I'm in the middle of the wilderness and I want somebody to hear me from 2 mountains away. Or
Correct.
maybe I'm in the urban environment and like I feel like my life is in danger, something's going on, and I want to call for help. And so you trigger the siren that way, and it's going to get someone's attention and hopefully come help you out. But it never even occurred to me that you would be, first of all, instead of falling down, falling up. Is that the right thing to say when you're accelerating in the water? And then second of
Well,
all,
yes.
the idea that the siren could be heard through the water. I mean, I get you can hear things underwater,
Yeah.
obviously. I guess a loud siren like that was enough to get the attention of the person that was with them. So there's just so many aspects of this that I would have never thought about it. And it gets back to the Apple Watch in general, and of course the Ultra specifically with the siren, but any Apple Watch is that nobody plans to be in a car accident or to fall
Sure.
down or to any of these things. You don't plan for these things to happen, but if they do, gosh, you are so happy that you or your loved one is wearing the Apple Watch to protect you. And this is an example of it. I mean, he was obviously, I presume, taking advantage of maybe some of the SCUBA features of the Ultra that are unique to that
I
device.
would think.
But
Yeah.
how wonderful that it somebody thought ahead of like, hey, what if this bizarre situation happens to somebody? Let's have some alerts. And then he's saying that the guy that helped him says that this saved your life because if you had continued to go up without, and I don't know, I've never done scuba diving. What is it like? Your oxygen level, you have to get your
Something.
body acclimated to the amount of
Right.
oxygen, whatever that is. People that are scuba divers are rolling their eyes at me because they understand this stuff better than I do. But it's dangerous, and apparently he's saying it could have killed him. Who knows? But so it's just another example of the Apple Watch being your little buddy looking out for you, and if you need some help, helping you out.
Not only are we impressed with this, Tim Cook was also impressed. So the diver sent an email to Apple thanking them for this feature, and Tim Cook replied, "I'm so glad your instructor heard the alarm and you quickly assisted you. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us. Be well." So who knows? This diver might show up in an Apple commercial at some point,
Could be.
and
Could
it
be.
could
Could
be
be.
how to save his life. What an interesting story on that. I like it. You know, you and I actually share, we've talked about this before, when we do workouts, right? So we can share, like, even we haven't gone to the competition aspect yet, but apparently now we're going to start sharing our scores from sleeping overnight. Okay, maybe not. But this is something new. So the watchOS 26 brought in a couple of new features. Not a whole lot was new there. You know, of course, it's liquid glass interface and everything. But there were
Mhm.
two features. We mentioned this at least last week, if not 2 weeks ago. One is the hypertension notifications, extremely important. Thrilled to see that there. And then they also added the sleep score on this. So anything we want to say on the hypertension notifications? I mean, to me, this is just a no-brainer. Keep it on. It's
Another
just great
example
to
of
be
your
able to.
watch looking out for you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. But I just think that's great, along with like the atrial fibrillation, anything else going on with that it kind of gives you some kind of alert. And I am positive we will hear Where Are You At segments later about some of that. But the sleep score is a little bit interesting on this, Jeff. I've always enjoyed now, because we talked about this. If you wear your watch overnight, which I have been, even with my Ultra One, I wear it overnight. Well, in the morning, you will get this little report of your sleep. And it typically shows you how long overnight you spent in deep sleep, how long in core sleep, how long in REM sleep, and then if you woke up during the night. So every morning, my wife and I compare these and we say, oh, I got 30 minutes of deep sleep. I got an hour and a half of deep sleep, because that's some of the most important that you should have. Well, now they sort of aggregated not just that, but some other components every morning into this sleep score. And
Mhm.
Jeff, I got to tell you, this almost makes me more anxious because I have to it's like, oh my goodness, I scored a 68. It's like, and I just have nightmares of grade school. It's like, oh well, that can't be good enough. I was like, I got to get this up more, and it's causing more anxious, not sleepless nights for me with the sleep score in there. And maybe that's just me. I get that all the time, but I am glad that there's more information. But it's like there's a little bit more here than there was before.
Yeah. And I mean, I like what Apple's trying to do. They're trying to make it simple and understandable, just to get it down to a simple number
Sure,
that you can
sure.
just look at that number. And one thing that's neat, and you and I were talking about this before we started to record. So like if I'm in my health app and I tap on sleep score, which I happen to have listed in the summary. So it's one of those 10 things there. And so I'm seeing my sleep score. It's telling me that last night I got a 78, which it says was high. I guess that's pretty good. But what I
Oh,
see is if I
I
tap
got
the
an
words,
89. I'm just going to
oh,
point
well,
out. So
la
I
ti
beat.
da.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't need this pressure to compare. Go ahead, please.
But what's interesting is if you tap over there, you tap like the arrow. So like I can see all the details of my sleep score, like how much hours of sleep I got, what time I went to bedtime. But there's this little thing called show in charts. And if you tap
Yes.
on show in charts, and of course, this is what the health app shows us for all sorts of data that it looks at, you can look at it, from a week to week basis, a month to month basis, a 6 month basis, and you can sort of see over time, even though sleep score just came out a few weeks ago with the new operating systems, I can actually see my sleep scores going back a very long time. I can see, for example, that like
Yeah.
usually I'm high to excellent. I mean, good for me. But if I go back over time, I see that May 6, 2025, I got a like I don't know what the number was. It was between low and very low. So I don't know what I
Whoa.
was doing back on May 6th. Now, May 5th, that's Cinco de Mayo. I don't remember like doing too much partying this year, but like
You were
maybe I had too
you
many
had your
margaritas. I
pinata
have no
going.
idea. Exactly. I don't know. It's one too many
Yeah.
margaritas, had a bad night of sleep. Who knows? But and of course that's the whole point of this is that you can look at Apple's not going to tell you what it means. You need to look at the number and say, huh, this is lower than
Yeah.
normal. What did I
Right.
do that might have affected that? Or this is better than normal. What did I do? And you can decide if you want to change yourself accordingly. But I just thought it was interesting that sleep scores can go all the way back. I mean, who knows? Maybe it goes back years. I have no idea. Yeah, here's another one. I see December 1st of 2024. I was a little bit lower. So who knows what I was doing
Wow. You really going
then.
back. That,
So anyway, so you can, so it's just an interesting, but I like the idea of just having a simple number, and it's like, oh, you can just gonna get an overall sense of things. So
yeah, I see the point. It's just I got to get over my grade school deficiencies. It says sleep score measures three key metrics: the duration, I'm assuming duration of your sleep, your bedtime, like when you went to bed. See, again, I'm just like hearing my mom yell at me if I got to get to bed in time. And
mhm.
then interruptions, and I assume that that means interruptions overnight if you woke up,
Yeah,
if you're up.
yeah.
So yeah, and it gives you that score. Yeah, I mean, again, I do appreciate it from the overall standpoint of just focusing on this. It's something important. Sleep is always important. And if it gives other folks, including myself, the ability to sort of measure something and sort of track that and just be aware of that, I think that's always helpful. I mean, just that alone has been helpful. I used to never care or know about how much REM sleep versus deep sleep that I got in. Now I do. And it's like I can see if I don't go to bed at a certain time, or if I have some too much alcohol one day or something else, something happens, or too much caffeine before bed, that kind of a thing, I see the differences. And that's just good from an educational standpoint, if nothing else.
Hmm.
Let's talk about some batteries. Batteries get a little bit of a bad rap sometimes, especially when we're talking about battery packs in luggage in airplanes. That's what a lot of people think of. Doesn't happen all that much. It's not as much as what the journalist would like to, think, because, hey, it's a screaming headline there that happens. But this is a great point. I'm thrilled that you put this in from John Gruber at Daring Fireball, because if you are planning to take some battery packs anywhere, really, but again, if you're going to fly with them, because some airlines now do prohibit that, or they require you to put it into either check luggage or not check luggage or something. I mean, there's some regulations now or rules that some are putting out. If you are going to have a battery pack, I would just make sure that it's a trusted version of it, right? You and I have talked a lot of times about Belkin, Anchor, some of the brand names that we know and trust. And then, we're not a sponsor, but it's just like anything else. You're going to get what you pay for. There's reasons why people don't normally get those if they go to some quote knockoffs or lot less expensive versions, and you might be getting what you pay for. And John Gruber goes into this study here, links to a story in The Verge about his gut feeling has long been that cheap battery packs and cheap products with integrated batteries are dangerous.
Yeah. If it seems like too much of a good thing, it probably is. And,
Probably is.
this is talking about batteries. I've had the same experience in the past with like some iPhone USB cords and stuff like that, where a little bit
Yes.
cheaper and no name. Like you feel like you're saving yourselves $5 or $10 or sometimes even more, but it's probably not worth trying to, pinch pennies too much on that, because you want to get something that's a better quality, that's going to work better.
Right.
And this is perhaps more of an issue, way back in the day, Apple was more protective. Like it was all the Lightning connector, it was all the made for iPhone program and stuff like that, which made things, there were fewer accessory options, but the hope was that they were a little bit better and at least checked, directly or indirectly by Apple.
Right.
Nowadays, we have USB-C. You can plug whatever you want into your iPhone or iPad. Even the MagSafe stuff, because it's based on the Qi standard. You can buy something that's branded as MagSafe, which is going to be a little bit better. But you can also just buy something that's the Qi standard, and anyone and their brother can make something that's compatible to the Qi standard. And then, of course, with external batteries too, any cords. So it's nice that there's all this stuff on Amazon that you can get some deals on, but again, so maybe there's nothing that we all didn't know in our heart was true from this article, but it's nice to see that it's informative to see some objective studies saying, what, it's a little dangerous to go for some of these products, especially when it comes to like a lithium ion battery, which can in theoretically, blow up or something like that, or, have issues happen to it. So
Yeah.
you use some, use something that's been reviewed, use some name brand stuff. That's just the good advice.
I like the story that John linked to here. Now, this was a report from Lumafield, but he links to a story in The Verge because you can read a little bit more about it. But the first picture here is like the X-ray picture of a battery pack. And this reminds me, to your point, Jeff, about getting the right cables, because it wasn't FireWire cables. I think it was USB-C cables. It was something that there was a story that you and I talked about a few weeks ago, where they were showing the
Yeah.
reason why it was important, because there was so much more, like you could see that it was just much better quality on the guts of these devices. And it was
Mm,
just worth paying a little bit extra more for that. And I feel like that this is sort of the same thing here too.
yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Good advice.
Let's thank our sponsor today, Lit Software, litsoftware.com. Lit Software was one of the first iPad developer, I would say the app developers, Jeff, that you and I knew that were specifically making legal apps for the iPad. And that's where they started, even though today, because of the way that Apple allows programmers today that they can provide an app for the iPad that will also run on the Mac. These software applications run on the Mac as well. But most of the time, we are talking specifically about the iPad, because they started out with the Trial Pad app. Fantastic trial presentation, or any presentation, actually.
Right.
They
Right.
also provide the Transcript Pad app, which you talk about quite a bit because you use it quite a bit in your day-to-day practice. They also have Doc Review Pad for document review and producing documents. And then brand new just a few months ago, Timeline Pad obviously creates visual timelines, which is fantastic. You get all of that and more in the Suite that they sell. Lit Software has the Lit Suite, and all of those apps come together. Now you can just get it as an individual. Go on, you can just get a subscription through your Apple ID. But one of the other things that you can consider if you're at a large corporation or a large law firm is their enterprise option, which is just amazing, because then it's not like each individual has to have their own version of the license. Is that a firm or a corporation or an organization can purchase a glob of licenses, a block of licenses, and then they can assign them to the individuals that might need them. This is a few years old that they've been doing this now, but I remember in the beginning, this was one of the big questions that they faced. And I'm just glad that they've offered this enterprise program now for a long time, because I know that a lot of people take a good advantage of it.
Yeah. One of the things that I particularly like about these programs is when, when you're using professional software, some software developers fall into the trap of saying, we're going to make this so powerful and there's going to be so much in there that it's not going to be very accessible to you. If you take somebody that's never used Photoshop before, I don't want to name any other, let's just say certain programs out there, even certain legal specific programs out there that you can do a lot with them, but there is such a deep learning curve. And one of the advantages of having software like what Lit Software does so wonderfully for the iPad is it's just sort of the very nature of being on these Apple products like the iPad and like the iPhone that, user interface is so important that it just sort of like the people that develop for these platforms, not that there aren't some bad iPad apps out there, because there certainly are, but the overall quality of the user interface is just so good. And the Lit Software apps are a perfect example of it. I mean, you can pick up Transcript Pad, and even if you have never, I know this because I've worked with people on it, even if you've never used it before, it can take you minutes to instantly see, oh, I see how I would do this. I want to highlight from the beginning of this line to this line. I tap here and then I tap there and I've highlighted that range. And then I'm going to assign whatever issue code I want to do, or the same thing. So on the one hand, they're very accessible. But on the other hand, if you're going to spend money on software like this, you don't want it to collect dust on the shelf, right? You want people to actually use it. And one of the nice things about the Lit Suite products is that they have help up the wazoo for you. They have, their website itself has got all these resources on it. There's something that if you're within the app, you can actually use this thing called the Lit Suite Academy, and just on the main screen of the app, there'll be like a question mark and a circle, like the uniform, the information thing if you want more information. And if you tap that, you'll see a bunch of information, a bunch of things. But one of the things you'll see in there, I think it's the very first one, is the Lit Suite Academy, where you can tap on that and you can type in your email address, and you can then get into this community where you get all of these learning resources and stuff to help you with the app. So they have all of these opportunities to help you. And this is especially nice if you've got people in your firm that are, obviously very good attorneys, but they just don't consider themselves to be, that technically sophisticated. That's why this is perfect. If you give one of them one of these huge software suite programs that have been around for a while and have confusing interfaces and 10,000 buttons, I mean, that's just a waste of time. That's you're not going to get anywhere. But if you give them something that's so accessible that they could hold it in their iPad, and if it's got these help tools in it so that if they do have questions, they have a place to go, at the end product is it's something that's actually usable. And that's what I love about it. It's powerful, but it's usable. It's like what I say about the iPad or even the iPhone. They're powerful devices. They can do so much, and yet mere mortals can figure out how to do so much just because it's a nice interface. And so I love that Lit Suite is fallen into that sweet spot of incredibly powerful, but incredibly accessible.
They have fantastic resources as well. You made this point. They've got a great help center here. In fact, I still send lots of people to the same help center topics. Number one is like a lot of people ask, well, what kind of files can I pull into TrialPad or TranscriptPad, for example? And they do a great job. You can look that up here. That help center is fantastic. They also have a training page that you can jump on. And just the fact that Lit Suite Academy is just another reason. They also have, which is fairly new, they got this little chat bot, which a lot of websites have, but having the chat bot in there is also nifty too, just to ask. And obviously, you and I have worked with them for so long. They're always happy to answer questions. And you can email them. In fact, you can email them at hello@litsoftware.com. And if you do send them an email, please let them know that you heard Jeff and I talk about their apps. And if you mention that, you can get an additional license for free in the enterprise program. So the enterprise program starts at 10 licenses. You have to purchase 10. But if you mention us, send an email to hello@litsoftware.com and mention Jeff and I talking about this, you can get an 11th license for free, which I think is very, very generous on that. So anyway, even if you don't want the enterprise licenses, send them an email, hello@litsoftware.com. Let them know that you heard about Jeff and I talking about their apps, and that always helps us. And we are very thankful and grateful to Lit Software for sponsoring us, litsoftware.com. Let's go quickly to an In the Vision segment, because I think you've actually run the Lit Software apps on your Vision Pro. I know that they run because we've talked with Ian before on there. I don't know if that's a good way to do it, but anyway, in the Vision, we've talked about all of the immersive content, and I just love how you report this. You keep your great site of all the resources and the immersive content, Jeff. But now, live NBA games, is that right? Like you can sit courtside and they'll do a live game. That's pretty amazing now.
This is pretty cool. I've seen Apple's done some things where you can see some sports, but they're recorded. And I've seen the NBA All-Stars, like that, these things like that. And it's just so impressive when you're right there next to the football field or right there next to the basketball court and you see this stuff happen. It's like you have these in ridiculously, you could never afford to get a courtside seat for a Lakers game unless you happen to be like, I don't know, Ben Stiller or somebody like that. But
Kanye West or something.
Exactly. But the idea is why not just put, a camera in a couple of those different locations, and then everybody, like the masses, I say the masses that have a Vision Pro, but the public in general could get access to that incredible thing where you could look around and you could see what's going on and you just feel immersive and stuff. And so I love that they are starting to do this. I just love that it's even technically possible to do, because the bandwidth that's required to send immersive video, I mean, this is like far, far more bandwidth than you need for like, 1080p or 4K or stuff like that. And yet I guess they figured people have enough bandwidth nowadays that this is going to work. And so it's just a couple of games that are going to be in 2026. Apple is working with, I guess, Charter Communications, who must have the contract to do the NBA games for the Lakers. But so they're going to have this, and it's going to be fun to see how it all works out. I mean, I don't watch a lot of professional basketball games, but I'm going to be tempted to sign up. I'm sure there'll be a charge associated.
Oh, you'll have to watch
but,
this.
You just have to see what it will be like to actually be there. And, and it's interesting because when it comes to the Vision Pro stuff, we were just talking, I think maybe last week, that one of the new Vision Pro immersive videos that came out was that Elevated series where I think it was Tim Robbins narrating it, where you're sort of like up, like as if you're in a hot air balloon looking over a scene. And those are cool because it fills your entire field of view. But to actually the whiz bang feature of the Vision Pro is when it truly feels 3D. And so you want to be close to things so that 3D effect really comes through. If you're too far away, you don't appreciate the 3D effect. But like something like on a basketball court, I mean, in one of the little videos that Apple had with the basketball game that I saw last year, like there's a point where somebody, they throw the basketball and somebody misses the ball and it actually happens to come directly towards the camera, which on the one hand, that was an expensive camera to almost hit. On the other hand, Apple must have been so thrilled that that accidentally happened in the All-Star game, because like the 3D effect of this basketball coming at you was like, whoa, it was very exciting. And so, with those sorts of things where you're closer to the action, that's where it's going to make a big deal. So of all the sports you can have, I mean, football could be interesting, soccer could be interesting. But something where that's a little bit more intimate, like basketball, which is just a little bit smaller court and you're closer to the action, that's going to be some of the best stuff for immersive. So I'll be very curious to see this. And of course, I'd love to get into a situation in the future where whether you want to get that amazing seat for the concert or for the professional game or for whatever else, that you can just sign up and pretend like you're there and put on your Vision Pro or, future version of the Apple glasses or whatever it's going to be. So it's really cool to see them pushing the envelope on this stuff and trying new stuff. I can't wait. And, and all of this is possible because it was, as we talked about in the past, it was last spring that Blackmagic first came out with their new cameras that are so perfect for recording things in Vision Pro, because up until then, like there were very few cameras in existence that could even record this stuff. Apple had some in-house, but they were apparently really big. And so to actually have something that's about the size of a regular professional camera and that people could actually buy or rent, I just think that the amount of content is going to spiral in the future. So it's exciting to see this.
We have enjoyed in the past following the work-life balance of the underdogs.
Indeed.
What you said, you gave the whole history here. The Underdogs was a short video from Apple in what was the first one? Was that 2020? Okay.
2019.
2019.
Do you remember, Brett, what product it was that they developed in 2019 in that first video?
It was a pizza box of some kind. Am I right?
Exactly.
I remember. It was
a pizza box that was a circle instead of a square. And the funny part about that is, like, on Apple's campus, if you get a pizza from, Cafe Max, which is their cafeteria online, you actually, this is like, they have a box now. I don't know what came first. I suspect that the real world pizza box came first. But of course, does it surprise you that Apple has to come out with the best possible pizza box for their campus? Of course. Surprise you. But anyway, that was the premise of the first one in 2019. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, but then they had one sequel or two sequels. They had two sequels. Okay, because they were working from home during the pandemic. That was 2022, or you said, right? And then I do remember they were like in Thailand, like they were chasing one of the laptops was stolen, and there was a moped involved, and they were chasing that down. And so they got it back. They were chasing a stolen Mac. This is the 6th video. Wow, I didn't know that it was that long, but this one might be one of the best.
It's really funny
because I can't believe they call out as much as they do the blue screen of death. I mean, I can believe it on one hand, and I was trying to think, have there been other Apple commercial programs where they have called it out? I know that they've mentioned it, and I remember the I'm a Mac, I'm a PC videos. I think they've mentioned that in some of that. But man, they really just doubled down. And this was based on what was the CompuStrike, or it was one of the failures, right? That was obviously made the news a while back when everything went blue screen of death. But the Macs kept working, and this video is pretty cute as well.
They did indeed. It's a nice video. Of all that they've done, of the 5 before this, I actually thought the one in Thailand was one of the more funny ones. And yet that's one, you may remember, it came out last year and it was pulled within a week or two because I think people thought there was some dispute. People thought, I think it was like culturally insensitive, or I don't know what it was. Whatever it was, that one did not stay around very long. I don't think it's available on YouTube, certainly not on the official Apple channel anymore. But having said that, these have been funny. They're cleverly written. They're fun. They're not too serious. They're very sort of tongue in cheek and stuff like that.
Right.
When in my post today, I actually linked to the 4 people that star in these.
I saw
and the reason I linked to them is because whenever Apple has a lot of clever commercials. Obviously, they're Christmas. The ones that they come out for the holidays are always very clever and stuff. And except for the fact that we know that the agency that he uses, what is it, TBWA,
Day,
Chia Day,
yeah,
exactly. You
yeah,
know, they have
right.
their folks that they use, but like they don't give a lot of credit to these people. But I linked to the four actors in it because at least one of them, I forget which one of them it was. It was either I think it was maybe Mia, the third person. But like she actually mentioned on her LinkedIn profile that she was part like a marketing person that actually helped to develop these things. So I think that at
What?
least some of these people are not just the actors. I think that they actually have been part of coming up with the idea for this,
Oh
and
my
they've been so
goodness.
successful, and people have given them such a good reception that they're now on the sixth one in a row, and they're cute. And you know, it's simple stuff. You know, we know that Apple has certain advantages over the non-Apple devices, whether it's Mac versus PC, whether it's Android versus iPhone. But they do a very tongue-in-cheek and fun way of showing them. So it's nice to have these videos.
And we should say at the end, they do and go and help the Windows
They,
people. If you watch
yeah.
it all the way to the end, I'm not gonna, but it's like it's nice that it's like, hey, we're poking fun at you, but we're also gonna help you in the end as well. So thank you very much
I hope that
on
Apple
that.
continues to do these. I look forward to seeing number 7 in the series in 2026. Hopefully, we shall see.
That's awesome. In the know.
In the know.
I thought since we were talking about the Apple Watch, I really truly have been enjoying watchOS 26 along with my new Ultra 3. Not to the point where it's like everything is completely amazing and revolutionary. I just appreciate the small improvements. And one of them I did not know about, but we have talked about the control center in the Apple Watch. I mean, I knew about the control center. This is when you tap the bottom button, not the digital crown button, but the button beneath that, and you go into the control center, the same one that you can get by swiping down in the upper right corner of your phone or an iPad. And this is where you have things like you can turn on and off your wireless if you want to. You have the flashlight in there. You can go into do not disturb. You can put a lot of buttons in. If you go all the way down to the very bottom, you can tap edit, and then that one will show you what else that you can add into or take away from that control center. But if you get to the point where you're messing around and you're a little confused, you can actually reset the control center. So that alone is great, that you can rearrange the control center the way that you want it. But you can revert it back to the original layout with the default controls. You have to go into the settings app on your Apple Watch, you tap control center, and then there is a reset control center layout. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You can also do this on your phone, on the Apple Watch app on your phone as well. But most of the time, I think people are thinking about it on that control center. I usually go to the control center several times during the day. I just like that I have access to some of these buttons on there. We've talked even about the double down on one of your tips. If you go to the control center and you can tap on the buttons, but you can also tap and hold on some of those buttons, and it gives you some additional options on there as well. But if you just wanted to get back to the original layout, you can go in and reset the control center layout on your Apple Watch, and then you can kind of, reset it and kind of rearrange or re-add some of the buttons that you want to put in there. So that's
Good
my
tip.
tip today, my Apple Watch.
I like a good tip. My tip has to do with the iPad. I guess you could use it with other things too, but I think of it from myself as the iPad and universal control. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
love universal control because if I'm working at home on my iMac, I can have my iPad just sitting
Yes.
right next to me, and just using the keyboard and the mouse or trackpad or whatever you have. I actually use a trackball myself, but using the trackball and my keyboard that are attached to my Mac, if I just move the cursor over from my computer onto the iPad
Yeah.
screen, it just goes over there. And then suddenly that same keyboard I can use to type on the iPad. And that same cursor, which is especially useful nowadays where we have like a new cursor system with iPadOS 26, stuff like that. So it's really nice. And I love being able to go back and forth and back and forth. Having said that, the only bad part is that sometimes you might sort of lose your cursor, like you're trying to go from one to the other, and where is it? That
Right.
can be a little. So the other day I was doing it, and I was using my Mac and using my iPad and going back and forth, and then I'm on my iPad, and my cursor is over there, and then I go to move my cursor back to the Mac screen, and it doesn't go back. I'm like, well, that's weird. Like I went all the
Oh.
way to the edge. I'm like, okay, well, sometimes my iPad gets confused, and instead of it being over here, it thinks it's on this side of the computer. So maybe I'll go to the edge of the
Right.
other side and get over from there. Nope. No, but my cursor was stuck in jail on my iPad screen, and it
In the
would not get
iPad
out.
jail.
I'm like, what is this? What is this? So I did some sleuthing afterwards, and I found this page on the website, on the Apple support website, that says that two specific things, you should not have to do this. your cursor should just seamlessly go back and
Of
forth. But if
course.
for some reason things don't work the way that they're supposed to, they have two tips. One of their tips was to put the iPad to sleep, which makes sense. I mean, if you just press that button to make the iPad go to sleep, well, then it's no longer on the iPad. So then that should be fine. It should go back to the computer. And that's one way it works. But another thing, and I didn't even know that this existed, is that, I feel like I'm using a PC here. Control Option Delete. Control Option Command Delete, which is another way of saying basically just hit all the buttons. Just hit them all, all the modifier keys, Control, Option, and Command, and Delete. And if you do that, it basically turns off universal control immediately. And as soon as you do your cursor just jumps right back to your Mac, and it's right where it's supposed to be. And then you can start up again, and you can go back over there again. But it's just, but I would tell you, I mean, now that I've said it, it's like, oh, well, of course, you just put it to sleep, or you just press these keys. But like when it was happening to me, I'm like, what's going on? I can't get my cursor back. Can I never use my Mac again? What's going on here? And so it was nice to see that Apple already does have a support page that told me what to do. And, hopefully I guarantee you that I'm not going to remember Control, Option, Command, Delete. I'm going to forget what that specific key combination is. But what I will know in the back of my head is that there is a key combination. And I suspect I'll just keep hitting things until I'll finally get the one that works. So it's nice to know that if your cursor gets stuck in your iPad, there's a way to get it back out and put it back on your Mac where it belongs.
So I don't use this mode as much, or maybe I do. So there is a way, like I know what you're saying, like I have my laptop and then I have the iPad, and so they're running in iPad mode and Mac mode, right? And then I can go my cursor and move that back. But what I typically do a lot, and doing it right now in fact, is I use my iPad as a second monitor. So I'm basically extending
that's
my
a completely
Mac
different mode. Also useful.
So different mode.
Useful.
But but I love that. So I just like the fact that I have these options and they do all work. Like so, and even if I have my iPad just sitting there, even if it's not an extended display, but I can use that cursor and I like that little here. They have a little picture of it here. It's almost it's all like a little springy board. Like when you're coming in, it kind of like a rubber band. It kind of grabs the mouse. It's not that bad, like you can get out of it. But I can just see sometimes when that wouldn't work. This is when you need this little tip here of control. Control, Option, Command. Okay, there's 4 buttons you got to mash on that. That's a lot.
The mode that you described, I've seen you use it. I know that whenever you do podcasts, you basically are using your iPad as a second monitor for your laptop, and it's very impressive. And the reason normally when I use Mac at home, because I have an iMac with a huge 27-inch screen, I don't really need the additional screen real estate.
But
if you have a laptop,
this is my laptop. Yeah.
Well, then you don't have the biggest screen real estate, and so you really do want to extend the screen. Every once in a while, I actually do extend the screen, even on my iMac at home. Like for example, I might be watching a video or of some sort. Maybe I just have like the Saints game on or something like that in a little video because I have a TV card on my computer that I can watch the TV signal.
Nice.
But like I don't want it taking up my screen, and so what I'll do is I'll extend my iPad, my iMac over to the iPad. And I keep saying iMac. I actually don't use an iMac anymore. I use a Mac Mini, but whatever. I still think of it as being an iMac. But I take my Mac with the big 27-inch screen studio display, and I extend it over to my iPad so that it's just as if it's part of my regular Mac's displays. And then I can put whatever window I want over there. I can put a little YouTube video there, and it can play video, or I can put like some little program I'm using off to the side. And so it really is a second monitor, and it works really well. So that is nice too. But for me personally, I don't use that nearly as much as I use universal control, but it's wonderful to have all these options. I love it.
We want to thank our sponsor today, Lit Software. You can find them at litsoftware.com. Send them an email, hello@litsoftware.com. Let them know that you heard us talking about it. Thanks, Jeff, as always, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.